Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Aref النايض. I'm the chairman of the Libya Institute for Advanced Studies, and it is my distinct honor and joy to participate in this esteemed conference entitled Cultural Heritage. And this is the second international conference on cultural heritage, and this year the topic is Hellenism and Islamic culture, positive sources and prospects of interaction. I am grateful to the Greek Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to the Foreign Affairs Institute of Athens, and special thanks to Reverend Dr. Aristarchos Grekas and Mr. Lucas Katsionis for their kind cooperation and kind invitation. Our topic is cultural heritage, and I will be speaking about cultural heritage and the retrieval of cultural themes. I'm the chairman of a movement called Ihya Libya, which means reviving Libya. It is a political movement, and I am a candidate for the presidential elections that are upcoming in Libya on December 24th, 2021. The whole notion of Ihya Libya is directly related to the topic of this conference, and it is about cultural heritage, and it is about cultural sources. The British philosopher R.G. Collingwood long ago spoke about cultural encapsulation and cultural retrieval. He was of the view that nothing really dies in history, that everything actually remains, but somehow gets transformed and gets subsumed into further forms and further paradigms. And that is so true. I solemnly believe that in the history of Libya, nothing has died. I think our challenge today is to search for the most positive themes in Libyan history and to try and retrieve these themes, try to revive these themes and re-express them in contemporary ways, in ways that are actually conducive to life in our world of today and to happiness in this world of today. Therefore, I will approach the topic of this conference in a rather practical manner. What are the themes of Hellenism in Libya and Islamic culture in Libya that can actually contribute to a thriving Libya, to a prosperous Libya, and to a happy Libya? And I would like to focus actually on three themes: the polis, the Socratic philosophy, and the Mediterranean. And I will try to speak about these three topics in ways that connect the Hellenistic heritage with the Islamic heritage with contemporary Libya. Now I will begin with the polis. As you well know, the polis, it is translated in English as city-state, but it's not quite a city-state. The polis is a community, a reality, and a kind of a mode of existence that thrived in antiquity. Athens was a polis, Sparta was a polis, and in Libya we had 5 polis in the east, okay, and they were called the Pentapolis, 5 cities of city-states. And in the west of Libya, we had 3 of them, and they were called Tripolis. And this is how the name of our capital emerged, Tripoli. So the polis was a basic political unit of governance and of life. The polis had a structure of local governance, a local oversight of not only the city, but also of its surroundings, and a way for the citizens to live in a happy, cooperative way with each other around an agora or an open space, and lots of facilities that serve the citizens. The citizens had a sense of camaraderie, a sense of community, and built a life that sought to be happy for everyone. The whole goal of the polis was the good of the citizens and the happiness of the citizens, as Plato famously described in his book, The Republic, and its Greek name is actually derived from the polis. Now, in Libya, the Greeks built polis or several city-states, and these actually, some of them were originally Greek, some were actually built on Phoenician beginnings, and these became the center of life. now, these police are visited as antiquities, especially in eastern Libya. Sirene is one of the most beautiful archaeological sites, and it is only a few kilometers east of Benghazi, where I am. And it's an amazing site to visit. But what has survived of the notion of polis in Libya? And this is a very important question, because it is of direct relevance to what we need to do in terms of governance today in Libya. After the Greek period, the Romans occupied these cities, and they became civitas, which is the kind of the Roman equivalent of polis. But then also, even during the Islamic period, the city-state of Jdabia, for example, thrived for several centuries, and even desert city-states like Zalla and Zuwaila, Ojala. These are city-states that were quite independent in many ways, that they had local governance and took care of their local citizens. So the model of polis actually survived in Libya for a very long time after the Greek period, and it survived into modern times. It is really only with the emergence of the modern state under the Italian occupation, where centralized governance became so dominating, especially under the General Graziani's rule and his period. The central government became so dominating, it crushed all notions of polis or city-state or local community. In Libya, there is an ongoing debate today about centralism versus decentralization. And there are several models of decentralization. Some people want to go back to the model of the three provinces, Cyrenaica, Tripolitania, and Fezzan. Some people say, no, we should go back to the municipality model that was or governorate model that was established during the king's time of 10 kind of provinces. I believe that the best way to decentralize Libya is to actually retrieve the notion of polis, and to retrieve it not just kind of superficially or artificially as just administrative center, but to try and retrieve the cultural richness of a polis, the open space. The civitas is the basis of civil society, of a democratic dialogue amongst the citizens. I believe that, especially after 2011 and the collapse of the central state, many of Libya's cities and towns became fiercely independent, fiercely fond of their own decision making. And attempts to re-centralize Libya around the capital, I think, are futile in many ways. First of all, they're not practical, because many of these cities now have their own kind of emergent spirit. But also, I don't think it is wise to actually re-centralize Libya, because centralization is precisely what people revolted against. And centralization is precisely what led to the retardation of Libya for over half a century now. I believe that localization is very important and locality is very important. But when we retrieve the concept of polis, we should actually retrieve it with all its richness. What it means to have a democratic life in a town or a city or an oasis or even a network of villages. Let us not forget that Sparta, for example, was a network of villages. So Libya has a history, a Greek history of polis. In Cyrenaica, as I said, with the 5 cities, the Pentapolis, and in the west with the 3 cities, the Tripolis. Now, of course, the number of polis has increased tremendously. So I think we have over 103 polis or municipal centers. Municipalities should be respected. They should have their own budget, and they should have their own self-governance. Now, the dilemma of how to keep the country united when you give that kind of leeway to the locality can be easily solved with today's technologies. We don't need military stamping down from top down to impose centralization. What we can do is to knit the country together, knit the polis together in a network or a grid of communication and technology, using the latest technologies of communications, networking, blockchain, to establish networks of trust, and having an economy that's actually quite networked. So Estonia is a good model of this, and various other countries are doing some interesting work, including Taiwan, for example. These are role models of how we can knit together a country, even if it has these kind of semi-autonomous, fairly independent, self-governing municipal centers. So when we speak about cultural heritage in this conference, let us remember that the polis is part of our cultural heritage as Libyans, and we should be proud of that Greek legacy. Libya has a very rich mosaic of multiple cultures. We should be proud of our Greek heritage, our Roman heritage, of our Amazigh heritage, Tabu heritage, Tuareg heritage, Arab heritage, Islamic heritage. All of these cultures intermingled in Libya, and none of them left without leaving a trace. Everything survived in history. Everything is encapsulated. The challenge is to retrieve it, re-articulate it, and try to say something positive, use it for something positive for today. This is the first element of cultural heritage that I think is retrievable and that can be re-articulated. The second element is the Socratic philosophy, or rather the Socratic attitude. Very few people know that Libya had one of the most ancient Socratic schools, which was called the Cyrenaic school, after Cyrene, which is a city in the east of Libya. Socrates had several students, and his students established several schools which are called Socratic schools. One of his important students is Aristippus, who was a Libyan born in Cyrene. And Aristippus had a daughter called Arete, and we're very proud that the first woman philosopher is a Libyan, born in Cyrene. Arete trained her son, Aristippus the younger, and he was called Metrodidactos. He was mother taught. So this school, the Cyrenaic school, was a Socratic school. And as you know, Socrates had many great things to teach. But the most important thing that Socrates taught, I think, was that he knew that he did not know. That attitude of epistemic humility, of knowing that we are always learning, and that life is always a continuous journey of inquiry. That humans are error prone, that we are fallibilistic, that we make mistakes, and that we are always learning, and that we should always be asking in order to learn. That Socratic attitude was very much in Libya in the Hellenistic period, and was the central teaching of the Socratic school of Aristippus that thrived in Cyrene and eastern Libya. That school survived for about a century, and then it became integrated into Epicureanism and influenced Pyrrhonianism, and eventually through complex history, it has left its traces in various ways in multiple cultures, including Stoicism, for example, during Roman times. Now, granted that the Arab conquest of North Africa, of course, is a completely new cultural phenomenon. But what's interesting is that definitely nothing dies in history. If you really look closely at Libya, there is a Socratic attitude in the very ethos and the culture of the best of our sages, even during the Islamic period. Imam Malik, who was the jurist of Medina of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who established the Maliki school, which became the dominant juridical school in Libya, actually says that 2/3 of knowledge is I don't know. La adri, I do not know. So this humility actually became part of the Islamic culture of Libya, and Malikism is the main school of Libyan thought. Now, our sages, our spiritual leaders in Sufism, our teachers in Sufism, in all the schools, actually inherited this kind of Socratic attitude of what I call epistemic humility, of knowing that you don't know and that you're always learning.